It was a gray, rainy morning when the world seemed to stop for young Téjun. The streets were slick with rain, reflecting the somber gray sky above, and the muffled sound of footsteps echoed against the cold, empty alleys. Téjun, barely 10 years old, clutched his school bag tightly. But the weight he felt was not the burden of books, it was the crushing weight of grief and disbelief. His parents, the pillars of his young world, had been taken from him in an accident that the world called unfortunate, but which his heart could not accept so lightly. Even as he ran toward the grand funeral hall, the image of their smiles haunted him, the way his father's laughter could fill the room, how his mother's gentle hands soothed every fear he had. And now, all of that was gone, extinguished like a candle in a storm. Inside the funeral hall, the atmosphere was heavy, almost suffocating. Rich velvet curtains lined the walls, and polished marble floors gleamed beneath the soft, artificial light. A sea of black suits and somber faces surrounded the caskets. He stood at the edge of the crowd, invisible, unnoticed by most, except for those who were drawn to the tragic story of the young heir. He barely noticed the whispers, the hushed condolences. All he could feel was a hollow emptiness gnawing at his chest. The ceremony proceeded with mechanical precision. He remembered the last moment he had seen his parents alive, his father ruffling his hair with a smile, and his mother brushing a strand of hair from his face. Those memories were now like fragments of a dream. And the people who promised justice, who promised answers, seemed powerless in the face of this tragedy. Téjun's eyes, once bright and curious, now shimmered with tears that refused to fall. He was no longer a child in the protective cocoon of family. He was alone in a world that suddenly felt cold, unfair, and merciless. As the funeral progressed, Téjun's thoughts darkened. It wasn't just the loss of his parents that tormented him, but the whispers he had overheard from adults around him. Words like accident and negligence floated in the air, but one name repeated itself in murmurs: the man responsible. Téjun didn't yet fully understand the complexities of law or blame, but the seed of anger and revenge was planted deep within him. Somewhere, in the shadows of the hall, a figure watched Seilunia, a man who had paused his busy life to attend, yet whose presence felt hollow, distant, almost untouchable. This was not the comfort of family. That some people could escape consequences while others suffered endlessly. The young boy's gaze wandered to the empty seat at the front, reserved for the family patriarch Chairman Kim Pilhu had rushed back from his travels but remained conspicuously absent from the proceedings. Téjun didn't understand the politics, the corporate obligations, or the power struggles. All he understood was absence, loss, and betrayal. The absence of those who should protect, those who should care. His small hands tightened into fists. The grief was raw, but underneath it lay a spark of something darker, burning desire to see justice done. Time seemed to stretch as the ceremony continued. Tears flowed freely among the attendees. He could hear the muffled sobs of strangers, and the faint echo of funeral music that seemed almost cruel in its serenity. And then, a name was mentioned, the name of the man who had caused this irreparable loss. The room seemed to tilt, the air growing heavier. Téjun's heart pounded violently. He imagined a world where he could confront this man, where he could scream, where he could demand answers, where the injustice would crumble beneath his will. After the ceremony, Téjun wandered the halls alone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of incense and the faint hum of subdued chatter. He walked past the polished floors, past the rows of chairs. His reflection in the glass seemed like another version of himself, a lost child. believed in the goodness of the world. He pressed his forehead against the cool surface, feeling the finality of life, the irreversible passage of time. And in that moment, a vow formed in the depths of his heart: I will make sure justice is done. The evening descended, shrouding the world in darkness. Téjun left the funeral hall under the cold drizzle, his small figure hunched against the wind. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, but they brought no warmth. He wandered aimlessly, lost in thought, as memories and grief battled within him. Somewhere in the distance, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, cars honking, people bustling, lives moving forward, but for Téjun, time had stopped. His parents were gone, the man responsible remained free, and the world felt like a place that had turned its back on him. And yet, in the stillness of that rainy night, the spark of determination flickered. A plan, hazy but persistent, began to take shape in his mind. He would grow strong, and one day, the scales of justice, however delayed, would tip. That night, Téjun's room was silent, except for the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open, mind racing with fragments of memories and half-formed thoughts of vengeance. The tears finally came, not in torrents, but in quiet streams, as the weight of loss pressed down upon him. Yet beneath the grief, beneath the sorrow, lay a resolve as sharp as a blade. He would not allow himself to be a victim forever. He would become the force that even the strongest could not ignore. And in that silent, solitary night, the journey began, not of a child, but of a young soul hardened by tragedy, fueled by anger, and destined for a path that would intertwine fate, revenge, and an unexpected encounter with someone who would one day change everything. The first whispers of his future were carried by the rain, the wind, and the cold, unyielding streets. A life once filled with laughter and warmth had been replaced by shadows and questions. Who could he trust? Who would stand by him? And, most hauntingly, how could he ever forgive the man responsible? The answers were unknown, but Téjun's heart already knew one thing: he would not rest until he faced the truth. Until he understood the reason, until the pain that consumed him found a form of justice. And though he could not yet see the path ahead, the audience could sense it, the spark of a story that would unfold in darkness and light, in love and hate, in sorrow and hope. The years passed, yet the shadow of that rainy day never left Téjun. The once fragile, grieving boy had grown into a young man, tall and lean, his eyes carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. He moved through life with the careful precision of someone who had learned to survive in a world that had betrayed him. Every smile he gave, every word he spoke, was measured, practiced, like armor against the vulnerability he had once known. But beneath the calculated exterior, the fire of that long-ago vow still burned, quietly shaping his every decision, every interaction. The city had grown with him, bustling with life. He navigated its streets with the skill of someone invisible, observing more than participating. He knew the faces of the powerful, the whispers of the influential, and he understood the subtle currents that moved society. Every conversation, every gathering, every public event he attended was a calculated step toward the day he could confront the man who had destroyed his world. But life, as it often does, had its own plans, intertwining destinies in ways that could never be anticipated. It was during one of these social events, a charity gala, glittering and opulent, filled with the city's elite, that Téjun's world tilted once again. The grand ballroom was alive with crystal chandeliers, the soft clink of champagne glasses, and the murmur of conversations that danced between politeness and ambition. Téjun moved quietly along the edges of the crowd, unseen, yet observing every detail. He had dressed impeccably, a tailored suit that emphasized his lean frame, yet he carried it like armor, not vanity. And then, amid the swirl of elegance and excess, he saw her Seiel. She was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. Her presence seemed to bend a light, to demand attention without effort, yet she carried an air of fragility, of unspoken sorrow that mirrored his own hidden grief. Seiel's eyes were like twin pools of memory, deep and compelling, reflecting a past she perhaps didn't fully understand herself. Téjun's carefully constructed exterior faltered, a flicker of curiosity, and something far more dangerous, a pull, magnetic and undeniable. He knew nothing of her story yet, but instinct told him that it was entwined with his own. The world had brought them to the same room, at the same time, for a reason that neither could yet comprehend. As the evening progressed, their paths inevitably crossed. Téjun, ever cautious, maintained a measured distance. Observing her from across the room, Seiel, unaware of the boy who had once been lost in grief, moved with a grace that belied her own inner turmoil. Their first words were polite, clipped to formality, masked as casual conversation, but the air between them thrummed with tension. It was as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for them to realize the threads of fate that were weaving them together. Every glance, every accidental brush of hands, carried weight far beyond social etiquette. It was the beginning of a connection neither fully understood. Yet, even in the midst of this growing intrigue, the shadows of the past lingered. Téjun's mind, sharp and analytical, could not ignore the faint whispers he had heard about Seiel's family connections, about her proximity to the world that had caused his parents' demise. Doubt and suspicion coiled around his thoughts like a predator waiting in the dark. Was she an innocent caught in the tides of her family's influence, or was there more to her than the delicate facade suggested? The question gnawed at him, threatening to dismantle the fragile stirrings of attraction that had begun to emerge. And though he would not admit it, even to himself, he felt the first stirrings of something far more complex than vengeance and emotion that could both heal and destroy. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters became more frequent. Each meeting, each conversation, layered with subtle tension and unspoken questions, Téjun found himself intrigued by Seiel's intellect. She, in turn, seemed drawn to the intensity in his gaze, the way his presence commanded attention without effort. There were moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, where their hands brushed, where laughter broke through the tension, where the world around them ceased to exist. In those moments, Téjun allowed himself to imagine a life unshackled from grief, a life where connection and love could exist alongside justice. But the shadow of revenge, patient and relentless, reminded him that nothing was ever simple, nothing ever free. One evening, the tension reached a delicate precipice. A discreet affair meant to discuss business alliances and potential investments. Her fingers lightly touching the keys as if coaxing music from the air itself. When their eyes met across the room, the air seemed to charge, the subtle hum of unspoken emotions vibrating between them. Téjun approached with careful steps, heart pounding against the chest he had long trained to control. The conversation began lightly, almost innocuously, but soon evolved into something more intimate, sharing of thoughts. A revealing of fears, a tentative opening of hearts that had long been guarded. It was during this encounter that Téjun glimpsed a vulnerability in Seiel that mirrored his own. She spoke of loss, of family pressures, of the loneliness that fame and fortune often concealed. In that moment, Téjun's resolve wavered. The carefully constructed wall around his emotions trembled. He wanted to comfort her, to shield her from the harshness of the world, yet he could not ignore the simmering question that had driven him for years. What was her connection to the tragedy that had claimed his parents? Suspicion and desire warred within him. Each word, each glance, carried dual meanings, one for the budding connection, one for the silent investigation that his heart demanded. As the night deepened, a sudden interruption shattered the fragile cocoon of intimacy. A figure from the past emerged, a man with power, influence, and a presence that seemed to consume the space around him. Téjun's gaze sharpened, his body tensing as memories of loss and injustice surged forward. Seiel noticed the change, the subtle shift in his demeanor, and a question flickered in her eyes. Téjun, ever composed yet internally storming, chose silence, masking the tempest with a polite nod and measured words. But the tension between them had evolved into something unspoken yet undeniable. Mutual recognition that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The first encounter had planted a seed. It was a fragile, tentative connection, shadowed by suspicion, yet nurtured by shared vulnerability. Téjun knew that the road ahead was perilous. He could not yet afford the luxury of complete trust, and yet, the pull toward Seiel was undeniable, almost magnetic. Every interaction, every fleeting moment of closeness, became a subtle game of observation, of testing boundaries, of balancing the fine line between personal desire and the unyielding quest for justice. And in that delicate balance, the audience could feel the tension mounting, the thrill of suspense, the heartache of unspoken longing, and the allure of a connection that promised both salvation and danger. By the time the gathering ended, Téjun had walked away with a heart heavier than before. He had glimpsed not only the possibility of love, but also the precariousness of trust. The night air was cool against his face, yet it brought no relief. The city stretched before him, alive with lights, noise, and the indifferent march of time. And yet, within him, a storm brewed, a mixture of determination, longing, and the persistent, relentless drive for answers. The journey was only beginning. The seeds of connection, revenge, and discovery had been sown, destined to grow in ways that would test the heart, challenge the soul, and confront the very essence of fate itself. The days following the gala were haunted by lingering thoughts that refused to release Téjun. Every passing moment seemed to echo with Seiel's presence, the soft lilt of her voice, the fleeting warmth in her gaze, and the fragile vulnerability he had glimpsed. He tried to bury it beneath layers of focus and duty, convincing himself that his mission for justice was paramount. Yet, the heart has a way of undermining reason, and with each recollection of her, a subtle ache pulsed through him, soft and insistent, impossible to ignore. She wandered through her life with an unfamiliar restlessness, an awareness that someone had brushed against the core of her being and left it exposed. It frightened her, this awareness, for she had long protected herself behind masks of charm, laughter, and public composure. And yet, there was something in Téjun, something raw, intense, and impossibly magnetic, that reached past her defenses. Stirring a curiosity that bordered on obsession, she found herself recalling his gestures, his voice, the piercing focus in his eyes, and the subtle tension that seemed to surround him. As if the world itself clung to his every step. The city, oblivious to the brewing storm between them, continued its indifferent rhythm. Neon lights shimmered across rain-slick streets, car horns punctuated the air, and life moved forward with relentless momentum. Yet, in the quiet corners where shadows pooled and secrets thrived, the past and present collided. Téjun began to notice discrepancies in Seiel's world, the fleeting glimpses of whispered conversations, the unexplained absences, and the subtle signs that all was not as it seemed. His instincts, honed by years of vigilance and survival, screamed warnings. There was danger here, hidden beneath the delicate veneer of beauty and grace. And perhaps, more dangerously, there was a vulnerability that he had begun to care for, an innocence he felt compelled to protect. Their next encounter came by what seemed like chance, a secluded cafe tucked away in a quiet street, far from the opulence and scrutiny of public life. Téjun arrived first, choosing a table near the window, where rain streaked the glass in slow, shimmering lines. The world outside moved like a blur, but inside, time felt suspended. Seiel arrived moments later, her presence illuminating the dim interior. Their eyes met, and for a brief instant, words were unnecessary. The tension that had been simmering beneath polite exchanges, shared glances, and fleeting touches erupted into an unspoken understanding. Both were aware of the risks, both were aware of the stakes, yet neither could resist the pull that drew them together. Conversation began cautiously, measured as always. Téjun, ever analytical, probed gently, asking questions that seemed casual but were layered with curiosity and concern. Seiel responded with practiced poise, yet beneath the surface, there were cracks, small slips of emotion that betrayed her inner turmoil. It was in these moments, subtle and fleeting, that Téjun began to piece together the fragments of her life, realizing that her world was far more complex, and perhaps more dangerous, than he had anticipated. And yet, the more he uncovered, the more he felt compelled to stay, to understand, to protect. It was a dangerous line he walked, one foot in the pursuit of justice, the other in the uncharted territory of desire. The conversation shifted, inevitably, to topics of personal pain and loss. Seiel's voice softened, her eyes distant, as she spoke of family pressures and unspoken burdens. Téjun listened, silent and attentive, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. It was in these moments of raw honesty that barriers began to crumble, that walls built from grief and suspicion showed cracks. Their hands brushed, a fleeting contact charged with electricity, and neither could deny the intensity of the connection. For the first time, the mission and the heart collided in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. But fate, never one to allow simplicity, intervened. A subtle noite dropped cup, a shadow at the door alerted Téjun's senses instantly. His body tensed, instincts kicking in. He scanned the room, noting every figure, every movement, and his eyes locked onto a man seated in the corner, watching them with unnerving intensity. Recognition hit him like a cold blade. This was not a coincidence. The man, well-dressed and confident, carried the same aura of power and menace that had haunted Téjun's past. Seiel noticed the sudden change in his demeanor and followed his gaze. Her expression shifted, a flicker of fear crossing her features. The air thickened, heavy with suspense, as unspoken questions hung between them. Why was he here? And how much did he know about Téjun, about the dangerous path they were treading? Before either could react, the man approached, smooth and deliberate. He introduced himself with a tone that was both courteous and commanding, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to shrink to the narrow space between the three of them. Taejun's mind raced, analyzing every word, every gesture, every hidden intention. Seiel's hand found his under the table, a silent plea for protection, for guidance, for reassurance. In that moment, their connection crystallized a bond forged not just from attraction, but from shared danger and unspoken understanding. The man left as abruptly as he had appeared, leaving behind a lingering sense of threat and an undeniable tension. Taejun's instincts told him that this encounter was only the beginning, that Seiel's world was entwined with forces far more dangerous than he had imagined. And yet, despite the looming shadows, there was a moment of vulnerability, a fleeting glimpse of humanity between them. Seiel looked at him, eyes wide, a question lingering unspoken. "Can I trust you?" Taejun met her gaze, a mix of determination and longing in his expression, silently answering that they would navigate this together, however perilous the path. Night descended, painting the city in shades of gold and silver. Their conversation had shifted to softer tones, more personal reflections, a subtle touch of the hand, a shared laugh, a look held just a moment too long. These small gestures carried weight beyond the ordinary. For Taejun, it was a revelation. He could allow himself to care. For Seiel, it was equally transformative. She realized that she could open her heart. That vulnerability did not equate to weakness, yet the tension never fully dissipated. Suspicion lingered, like a shadow at the edge of their growing intimacy. Taejun knew that Seiel's family connections and the mysterious man's appearance were not coincidences. Danger was closer than they imagined, and so, as the night drew to a close, they parted with an unspoken promise to protect each other. It was a beginning, tentative and fragile, yet charged with possibility, delicate dance between desire and caution, between hope and the looming threat of revelation. As Taejun walked alone through the quiet streets, he reflected on the delicate balance he now faced. The path of vengeance and justice had merged with something far more complex, the possibility of love, and the profound realization that life could never be reduced to simple binaries of right and wrong. In Seiel, he saw both a reflection of his own vulnerability and a challenge to his carefully constructed world. He allowed himself to hope, not just for justice. The city slept around him. Taejun knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, and new dangers. But, for this moment, he allowed himself to feel, to acknowledge the stirring of emotions he had long denied, to embrace the first sparks of something tender yet powerful. The fragile interlude that would define the trajectory of both their lives. Act 3 drew to a close, a tapestry of suspense, romance. The days after their encounter in the cafe felt like walking a tightrope for Taejun. Every shadow in the city seemed suspicious. Every casual glance from a stranger felt like a threat. The mysterious man's sudden appearance had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Yet, even amidst this tension, he couldn't stop thinking about Seiel. Her presence lingered in his mind. Her laugh echoing like a memory. Her gaze hauntingly vivid. He found himself replaying every conversation, realizing that she had begun to occupy a space in his life that he had long forbidden anyone to enter. Seiel, meanwhile, felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Her nights were restless, haunted by the idea that every choice carried consequences. She wondered if she could truly trust him, if his intentions were purely protective, or if he would eventually pull away when the shadows of her past caught up to them. But every time she saw him, every time their hands brushed or their eyes met, replaced by an irresistible yearning she could no longer deny. The tension came to a head one evening, when Téjun tracked the movements of the mysterious man to a secluded warehouse near the docks. He arrived at the scene under the cover of darkness, rain slicking the pavement and shadows stretching long and ominous. As he approached, he saw the man meeting with a group whose presence radiated menace, their conversations low and urgent. Taejun's instincts told him that this was a key moment. A revelation that could unravel the web of deceit surrounding Seiel. But he also knew that acting alone could be catastrophic. He needed her, needed the connection they had forged, if only to survive what was coming. Seiel, unaware of Taejun's surveillance, was preparing to leave for a family engagement when he called her urgently. His voice was low, tense, and urgent, caught between her obligations and the pull of danger that now intertwined with her growing feelings. Sensing that this was not merely about him, it was about both of them, about a truth that could no longer remain hidden. She met him at the edge of the city, rain falling softly around them, their breaths mingling in the cold night air. Together, they moved toward the warehouse, a careful, calculated progression that left little room for error. Taejun's eyes constantly scanned for threats, every shadow a potential danger, every sound a potential trap. Seiel followed closely. A silent acknowledgement of the trust and intimacy that had grown between them. The city behind them felt distant, irrelevant, as the looming threat ahead demanded their complete focus. And yet, even in the midst of danger, there was a growing tension between them. A push and pull of emotions that neither could fully control. Inside the warehouse, the group they had been tracking was deep in conversation, unaware of the pair watching from the shadows. Taejun's sharp eyes caught snippets of dialogue. Clues that painted a picture of a conspiracy that was far more dangerous than he had imagined. It involved Seiel's family, the mysterious man, and a network of power and influence that threatened to engulf them both. As he absorbed the information, he realized that protecting Seiel would require more than stealth. It would require courage, ingenuity, and a willingness to confront truths that were long buried. Seiel, sensing the tension in Taejun, whispered his name softly. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting moment, the weight of their unspoken emotions became palpable. She stepped closer, her hand finding his, a deliberate, comforting touch that spoke volumes. Taejun allowed himself a moment to absorb it, reminding him of why he fought, why he survived, and why he could not let her face the danger alone. The brief intimacy between them acted as a shield against the encroaching darkness, a fragile yet powerful connection that neither could deny. Suddenly, a noisy misstep, a shifted crates alerted the group inside. Heads turned, voices rose in alarm, pulling Seiel into the shadows just as lights flickered on, revealing the hostile figures moving toward their position. Heart-pounding, they navigated through the maze of crates and machinery, every step a calculated risk, every breath a test of nerve. Their hands remained intertwined, a lifeline amid chaos, their proximity amplifying both fear and an undeniable longing. The chase through the warehouse was brutal and tense. Taejun fought with precision, disabling threats with swift, deliberate moves, while Seiel proved surprisingly adept at navigating the environment. The combination of his training and her resourcefulness created a rhythm, dance of survival that also highlighted the growing interdependence between them. And yet, even as they evaded capture, their glances and touches carried a weight that transcended mere survival, signaling a connection that was rapidly deepening into something profound. At one critical moment, they found themselves cornered in a narrow corridor. With nowhere to run, Taejun pressed Seiel against the wall. "Stay close to me," he whispered, every syllable loaded with unspoken emotion. Seiel's heart raced, both from fear and from the intensity of the proximity. She nodded, her breath mingling with his. In that suspended moment, time seemed to bend. Then, with a sudden calculated move, Téjun created a diversion, throwing a small object to one side and exploiting the confusion to maneuver them toward an exit. They emerged into the cold night air, rain streaming down their faces, hearts pounding not just from the escape, rain washing away the grime and tension. The night seemed to acknowledge their connection, the city lights reflecting off wet streets, shimmering like stars beneath the storm. It was in this quiet aftermath that the romance, long simmering, could no longer be denied. Seiel, her voice trembling slightly, admitted her fear and quietly, her trust. Téjun, equally vulnerable, allowed himself to acknowledge the depth of his feelings. The pull that had been growing with every shared glance, every touch, every danger faced together. They leaned into each other, a tentative, electrifying closeness. The danger had forged something unexpected and profound, a connection that was equal parts desire, trust, and the thrill of survival. Yet, even in this intimate moment, the suspense lingered. The conspiracy they had uncovered was complex, the players powerful, and the stakes higher than ever. Their connection, though intense and real, existed in a world teeming with peril, where every choice could trigger catastrophe. And so, as they parted for the night, promising to face the next challenge together, yet potent, that promised both thrilling romance and dangerous confrontation in the acts to come. The night wrapped around them like a velvet cloak, concealing the city in shadows and rain. Yet, within those shadows, the embers of love, trust, and suspense burned brightly. Téjun and Seiel had emerged from the warehouse not only alive but fundamentally changed. Their hearts had been tested, their emotions ignited. For the first time, both understood that what awaited them would demand courage, honesty, and a willingness to embrace both danger and vulnerability. As they walked away, rain-drenched streets reflecting the city lights, neither spoke. Their clasped hands, shared glances, and synchronized steps conveyed everything. In the heart of suspense, amidst danger and uncertainty, romance had blossomed, fragile yet undeniable. And while the world remained oblivious to the storm swirling in their lives, Téjun and Seiel understood that together they could face whatever came next, be it betrayal, revelation, or the ultimate test of trust and love. Act 4 closed with the echo of raindrops on asphalt, a city alive with secrets, and two hearts intertwined. The night was far from over, but in the fragile warmth of shared trust, they found a reason to believe that even amidst shadows and threats, love could ignite like a flame bright, perilous, and impossible to ignore. The morning after the rainstorm felt surreal. Téjun and Seiel sat across from each other in a small, quiet cafe. The steam from their coffee curling like the lingering uncertainty between them. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but laden with the weight of everything that had transpired. Both knew that today would demand more than courage, it would demand truth, confrontation, and a willingness to confront the consequences of the dangerous paths they had walked together. Seiel finally broke the silence, her voice soft but resolute. She said, her fingers trembling slightly as they wrapped around her cup. "It's bigger than us. And if we don't face it, someone will get hurt, someone we care about." Her eyes met his, a mix of fear and determination shining through. Téjun nodded, feeling the pull of responsibility and the undeniable intensity of his feelings for her. Every heartbeat seemed to echo her words, urging him forward, intertwining duty and desire. The first lead they pursued took them to a secluded mansion on the outskirts of the city. A place whispered about in the corridors of power and secrecy. The mysterious man, the one who had shadowed Téjun for days, had left traces here, documents, cryptic messages, and hints of a betrayal that reached into Seiel's family. As they navigated the mansion's vast, dimly lit hallways, each creaking floorboard sounded like a threat, each shadow a possible enemy. Yet, despite the tension, there was an undeniable closeness between them. Seiel's hand found Téjun's instinctively, a silent affirmation that whatever came next, they faced it together. They discovered the first major revelation, a set of documents revealing that Seiel's late parents had been entangled in a financial conspiracy involving the mysterious man. The magnitude of the deceit was staggering, implicating powerful figures in both business and government. Seiel's hands shook as she read the documents. Téjun stood behind her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this," he whispered, the intimacy of the moment, amidst the gravity of betrayal, heightened the emotional stakes and deepened their bond. Their investigation led them next to an abandoned warehouse. The air was thick with anticipation, every shadow a potential threat. As they stepped inside, the mysterious man emerged from the darkness, flanked by his enforcers. His expression was a mixture of menace and recognition, his gaze locking onto Seiel with a possessiveness that sent shivers down her spine. Téjun positioned himself protectively, every muscle ready for conflict, yet every thought still drawn to the woman beside him. The confrontation began with words, sharp and cutting, revealing motives, secrets, and the twisted web of deception. The mysterious man admitted to manipulating Seiel's family for personal gain, seeking power and wealth without regard for the destruction left in his wake. His words struck Seiel like a physical blow, anger and hurt blending with the fear that had haunted her for weeks. Téjun's jaw tightened, his protective instincts ignited. But even in the heat of confrontation, his eyes never left Seiel's, conveying a silent promise to shield her from harm. As tension escalated, a physical struggle erupted. Téjun's skills and agility were tested against multiple opponents. Yet every glance at Seiel reminded him of the stakes beyond mere survival. Seiel, though initially hesitant, found courage she hadn't known she possessed. Using quick thinking and instinct, she assisted Téjun, creating diversions. Their teamwork in the chaos reflected not just mutual trust, but a growing emotional intimacy, the culmination of shared danger and unspoken longing. The climax of the confrontation arrived when Téjun cornered the mysterious man. The man's arrogance faltered under the weight of exposure, his power diminished by the courage and resourcefulness of Téjun and Seiel. In that moment, the danger that had loomed so large seemed to crystallize into clarity. The threats, the suspense, the manipulational had led to this confrontation where truth and justice would finally prevail. Seiel watched, her heart swelling with a mix of relief, pride, and the deepening realization that her connection with Téjun had transformed from fragile trust into something undeniable and enduring. With the threat neutralized, the emotional intensity between them finally took center stage. Téjun and Seiel found themselves alone amidst the wreckage of the warehouse, rain from earlier storms still dripping from broken skylights. Their breaths mingled, hearts racing from both adrenaline and the intensity of unspoken emotions. Seiel stepped closer, her hand brushing Téjun's cheek, her touch gentle, yet electrifying. I didn't know if I could trust anyone again, she admitted, voice trembling. But you made me believe. Taejon's response was a mixture of relief, desire, and profound affection. He took her hand, pressing it to his chest where his heartbeat thudded steadily, and whispered, "I'll never let anything happen to you." The tension that had built over weeks of suspense, danger, emotional vulnerability, and romantic longing finally dissolved into a shared intimacy. Their lips met in a tender, lingering kiss, the storm outside mirroring the intensity within, sealing a connection forged in the fires of danger and trust. The aftermath of the confrontation brought not only relief, but resolution. Téjun and Seiel returned to the city with a sense of purpose, armed with the truth and the knowledge that their bond was unshakable. Seiel confronted her family, laying bare the web of deceit and beginning the process of reconciliation and healing. Téjun stood by her side, both protector and partner. The emotional arcs that had been building over the previous actsphere, suspense, romance, trust, and heartache culminated in a sense of closure that was deeply satisfying yet realistic. As the city lights shimmered on wet streets, Téjun and Seiel walked hand in hand, their hearts aligned, their souls intertwined. They spoke quietly, sharing hopes and fears, dreams and regrets. The intimacy of their connection deepened by the trials they had faced together. Each glance, each touch, carried the weight of shared experience, and the warmth of love that had grown under extraordinary circumstances. The suspense that had driven the narrative transformed into a gentle tension of future possibilities, a promise that life would continue to challenge them. The final moments of Act 5 highlighted not just the resolution of external conflict, but the emotional and romantic fulfillment of the story. Téjun and Seiel stood atop a rooftop overlooking the city. Their hands remained intertwined, yet the world felt both expansive and safe within the circle of their shared presence. Seiel leaned her head against Téjun's shoulder. Téjun pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. The city below pulsed with life. The narrative arc suspense, danger, romance, emotional vulnerability, leaving the audience with a sense of catharsis, fulfillment, and hope. As dawn began to break, Téjun and Seiel turned toward the horizon. The past's shadows had shaped them, leaving a lasting impression not just on their hearts, but on the audience. The story closed not with finality, but with promise. A world once filled with fear and uncertainty now held the possibility of joy, intimacy, and shared purpose. Téjun and Seiel's journey had concluded in a manner that honored every twist. And as they walked forward, hand in hand, the morning sun spilled golden light across the city, illuminating streets that had once felt heavy with shadows. Téjun and Seiel walked side by side, the cool breeze carrying whispers of change and new beginnings. There was a serenity in the air, yet beneath it lingered a subtle tension, a reminder that life could shift in an instant. But today, the danger that had once defined them felt distant, almost like a fading echo of the past. Their hands brushed occasionally, lingering just enough to remind them of the bond that had grown stronger through adversity. Seiel paused by a small fountain in the city square, her reflection rippling in the water as she gazed at it thoughtfully. "Do you ever think about everything that happened?" she asked quietly, her voice a mix of wonder and vulnerability. "How it all changed us?" Téjun looked down at her, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "Every moment," he admitted, his tone both tender and firm. "It shaped us, tested us, and brought us here, together. And no matter what comes next, I wouldn't change a single thing." The intimacy in his words resonated deeply, a reminder that romance and emotional trust had survived the storm and now flourished in quiet strength. Their next stop was Seiel's family estate, where reconciliation had begun weeks earlier but still required patience and care. Her family greeted them with cautious warmth, the air thick with unspoken apologies and tentative hope. Seiel took a deep breath. Standing taller than ever, ready to face the past and protect her future, Téjun walked beside her, silently offering support, his presence a steadying anchor amidst lingering tensions. Together, they navigated conversations that had once seemed impossible, truths revealed, forgiveness sought, and bonds slowly mended. The emotional depth of these moments allowed both characters and audience to feel the weight of growth and healing. Meanwhile, the city continued its rhythm, unaware of the private victories and reconciliations taking place. Téjun and Seiel returned to familiar streets, revisiting places where suspense and danger had once dominated their lives. The coffee shop, the warehouse, even the rooftop where their love had been solidified, all held memories that now seemed tinged with nostalgia. Walking through these spaces, they reflected on how far they had come, how peril had tested their courage, and how love had remained constant despite uncertainty. The romance, once fragile and tentative, now glowed with a maturity shaped by trials and shared triumphs. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the large windows of their favorite cafe, Téjun reached for Seiel's hand and held it gently, the warmth of their touch speaking volumes. "We've been through so much," he said, his voice low, "but I want to face everything ahead with you." Seiel's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I feel the same," she whispered. "And I'm ready for whatever comes next." The simplicity of the words belied the depth of emotion, a testament to the journey they had endured together. Despite the calm, life was never entirely free from suspense. Téjun had learned through experience that the world carried unforeseen challenges. And even in moments of peace, vigilance was necessary. Occasionally, subtle hints reminded them that shadows lingered, an unknown figure watching from afar, a cryptic message left anonymously, the soft click of heels in a quiet hallway. Yet, these whispers of suspense were no longer overwhelming. Instead, they served as a reminder that courage and love had prepared them for anything, reinforcing the story's underlying tension while keeping hope and emotional resonance intact. Amidst these moments, romance flourished. Téjun and Seiel explored the city together, sharing laughter, quiet conversations, and stolen glances that spoke volumes. They dined at small bistros, wandered through parks, and attended art exhibits, each experience deepening their connection. Physical closeness and emotional intimacy intertwined seamlessly, creating scenes that were both heartwarming and subtly charged with anticipation. Their love had matured, no longer reliant solely on adrenaline or danger, but enriched by understanding, trust, and shared vulnerability. Seiel also pursued her personal growth, embracing opportunities she had once shied away from. She engaged in projects honoring her parents' legacy, navigating both the challenges and rewards of responsibility with Téjun's unwavering support. Their partnership extended beyond romance into shared purpose, a testament to the story's evolution from suspense-driven plot to emotionally rich, character-focused resolution. Téjun, too, found himself balancing the intensity of past dangers with the quiet joy of building a life alongside Seiel, learning to appreciate moments of peace without losing the vigilance that had once kept them alive. One evening, as the city lights shimmered against a darkening sky, Téjun surprised Seiel with a quiet rooftop dinner. Just the two of them, surrounded by the gentle hum of nighttime. Candles flickered, casting soft glows on their faces. "I've been thinking about the future," Téjun said, voice rich with sincerity. "I don't want this story to end with just surviving. I want it to be about living. Fully, together." Seiel's hand rested against his cheek, her eyes bright. "I've always wanted that," she replied. "With you, I feel like we can." The romance here is palpable, tender, and deeply satisfying. The culmination of suspense, emotional struggle, and shared victories. In quieter moments, they reflected on the lessons learned, the strength found in trust, the courage summoned in fear, the power of forgiveness, and the resilience of love. Suspenseful threads from previous acts had woven themselves into a backdrop that heightened emotional stakes, but never overshadowed personal growth. The story's resolution emphasized the balance between tension and tenderness, adventure and intimacy, danger and trust. Each beat contributed to a layered understanding of the characters' journey, making their triumphs not only believable but deeply moving. As weeks turned into months, the city became a canvas for their shared life. Téjun and Seiel moved into a small, cozy apartment filled with sunlight and laughter, decorating it with memories from their past adventures. Their friends, once worried and distant, became part of their new normal, celebrating their victories and supporting their dreams. Life was far from perfect, but the imperfections were embraced. For they reminded both of the fragility of peace and the beauty of love earned through struggle. The epilogue also allowed room for subtle suspense to linger. A mysterious letter slipped under their door. The camera of the narrativore, the voiceover pauses on their hands holding it, smiles mixing with curiosity and mild apprehension. It's a gentle reminder that while this chapter ends, life's unpredictability remains. And their love and resilience will continue to be tested. This keeps the audience engaged, suggesting that the story world is alive even after closure. In the final moments, Téjun and Seiel sat side by side on their balcony, watching the city breathe beneath them. The night sky, dotted with stars, mirrored the vast possibilities ahead. They spoke of dreams, whispered promises, and shared laughter that echoed into the quiet streets. "Whatever comes," Téjun said, his voice full of conviction, "we'll face it together." Seiel leaned her head against his shoulder, her smile serene. "Always," she whispered. The simplicity of the moment carried profound weight, a perfect closure to a journey defined by suspense, romance, and emotional depth. The act and the story as a whole ended, not with dramatic explosions or final confrontations, but with the quiet, satisfying resolution of love and trust. The audience could feel the lingering resonance of danger survived. Hearts healed, and connections strengthened. It left viewers with a sense of hope, catharsis, and anticipation for future possibilities, proving that emotional fulfillment and romance could coexist with suspense and adventure in a deeply compelling narrative. The city had settled into an uneasy calm. Téjun and Seiel, now enjoying their hard-earned peace, began to feel that life was finally aligning with their hopes. Yet, shadows, as always, were patient. The past never truly disappears, it waits, quietly, until the moment it can strike again. Téjun sensed it first, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a feeling he couldn't shake. The faintest whisper of danger lingered in the corners of familiar streets, reminding him that vigilance was never optional. Seiel, unaware of Téjun's growing unease, was lost in her own thoughts. Her days had been filled with creative projects, charitable engagements, and reconnecting with her family. But she often found herself replaying the events that had brought them together. The thrill of surviving past dangers had left an indelible mark. And while she cherished peace, there was a restlessness in her heart that hinted at unresolved mysteries. Together, they had built a life of laughter, tenderness, and trust, but was it enough to shield them from what was coming? It began with a letter plain, unmarked, and slipped under their door in the quiet hours of the night. Téjun picked it up with caution, noting the absence of handwriting, the sterile feel of anonymity. He unfolded the paper slowly, eyes scanning the words that made his blood run cold. It was a single sentence: "You are being watched. The truth you thought was buried is only beginning to surface." Seiel's hand touched his arm, sensing his tension, but he didn't speak immediately. His silence was heavy, charged with the history of battles fought and secrets revealed. Suspense escalated as they traced the origin of the message. Téjun's instincts led him to a series of forgotten contacts, shadowy figures he had once helped, and rumors he had ignored. Each lead hinted at a conspiracy far deeper than he had imagined, one that not only threatened their lives, but also challenged everything they thought they knew about the people around them. Seiel, despite her initial fear, displayed a calm determination that surprised even Téjun. Her courage had grown alongside her love for him, and now it was ready to face the unknown. Romantic tension intertwined seamlessly with the suspense. As they investigated, stolen moments of intimacy offered solace and strength. A touch on a tense night, a whispered promise during a risky meeting, a glance exchanged in the shadows, all these gestures reinforced the emotional connection between them, making the suspense more gripping because the audience cared deeply about their survival and happiness. Each step they took into danger was balanced by these emotional anchors, keeping the story deeply human. The investigation led them to unexpected revelations. Téjun discovered an old ally had betrayed him, motivated by secrets that had remained hidden for years. Seiel unearthed family secrets that linked her past to the current threat in ways she had never anticipated. The emotional weight of these discoveries created moments of heartache, betrayal, and doubt. Yet, the romance between Téjun and Seiel became a stabilizing force, their trust in each other strengthening as external pressures mounted. Suspense reached new heights as the audience realized that every revelation carried consequences, and no character could be fully trusted. Late nights in dimly lit apartments, tense exchanges in crowded streets, and clandestine meetings with figures cloaked in ambiguity painted a world where danger lurked at every corner. Téjun's strategic mind and Seiel's intuitive brilliance became a perfect synergy, combining action with emotional resonance. They navigated traps set by unseen enemies, decrypted messages encoded in subtle cues, and followed threads of a conspiracy that grew more complex with each step. The narrative tension kept viewers on edge, while the romance provided grounding amidst the chaos. Amidst the suspense, there were quiet, tender interludes that showcased the depth of their connection. Téjun and Seiel found moments to express vulnerability, sharing fears, recalling past trauma, and reaffirming their love. One night, in a safe house barely illuminated by a single lamp, Téjun held Seiel close. "No matter what happens," he whispered, voice trembling with emotion, "we face it together. We've survived everything before, and we'll survive this too." Seiel's eyes glistened with tears, her hands gripping his shoulders. "With you, I feel fearless," she replied softly. These moments of romance and emotional honesty made the stakes even higher, as viewers were reminded why these characters mattered beyond the thrill of suspense. As the plot thickened, new allies and enemies emerged. Characters thought to be lost or irrelevant resurfaced, carrying motivations shrouded in mystery. Téjun and Seiel had to navigate shifting alliances, test loyalties, and make difficult decisions that blurred moral lines. Each choice carried risk, heightening tension while revealing character depth. The narrative emphasized that love, trust, and courage were not just personal virtues, they were survival tools in a world where betrayal and danger were constant companions. The suspense reached its peak when Téjun and Seiel uncovered the mastermind behind the Threatsa figure, whose identity intertwined with their own pasts in ways that were shocking and emotionally charged. The revelation hit them not just with danger, but with the weight of betrayal and personal stakes that made every previous struggle feel like preparation for this moment. Their romance and emotional resilience became central to navigating the crisis, demonstrating that their bond was both a shield and a weapon in the face of adversity. Climactic sequences unfolded with precision and tension. Narrow escapes, calculated risks, and near discoveries kept the audience on edge, while inner monologues revealed the characters' emotional turmoil. Téjun's strategic brilliance, combined with Seiel's empathy and intuition, created moments of brilliance that resolved immediate threats while leaving lingering questions for the future. The suspense was intense but balanced, ensuring that romance and emotional resonance were never lost amidst the action. By the act's conclusion, the immediate threat was neutralized, but the story left hints of lingering mysteries and future challenges. Téjun and Seiel, having faced deception, danger, and personal revelations, now stood stronger together. Their romance had deepened through adversity, their emotional connection tested and solidified. Yet, the final moments carried a subtle, innocent knowledge that life's dangers never truly vanish, and that love and trust would continue to be essential tools for survival. The act ended with Téjun and Seiel standing on a quiet hill overlooking the city at dawn. Light spilled over the horizon, painting the skyline with hues of gold and pink. They held hands, hearts synchronized, eyes reflecting both relief and anticipation. Téjun squeezed Seiel's hand gently. "We've faced shadows before," he said softly, "and we'll face them again. Together." Seiel smiled, leaning into him. "Together," she echoed, a promise stronger than words. The city was bathed in the soft glow of dawn, a rare moment of stillness after months of chaos, fear, and relentless pursuit. Téjun and Seiel walked through quiet streets, their hands intertwined, the weight of the past finally easing, if only slightly. Every step they took felt like a reclaiming of life, a silent victory over the shadows that had haunted them. But even in this fragile calm, their senses remained alert, reminders of lessons learned and dangers survived. They entered their shared apartment, familiar and safe, yet every corner held memories of battles fought and threats faced. Seiel paused near the window, gazing at the city skyline. "It feels different," she whispered, her voice tinged with both awe and relief. Téjun joined her, his arm around her shoulders. "It's not just the city," he said softly. "It's us. We've changed. We've survived. And we've come out stronger." Their eyes met, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. Their bond, forged in trials and tempered by love, said everything. But even in this seemingly peaceful morning, remnants of uncertainty lingered. The mastermind they had confronted, the web of betrayal and deception, had left traces, loose threads that required careful attention. Téjun, ever vigilant, began a meticulous review of the information they had gathered, analyzing patterns and hidden messages. Seiel, with her intuition sharpened by experience, assisted him. Together, they worked quietly. The tension of the past weeks settling into a focused determination rather than fear. Their synergy was undeniable, brains, heart, and courage aligned in perfect harmony. Amidst this calm, their romance reached its most tender moments. Breakfast shared in comfortable silence, laughter over inside jokes, and subtle touches, the brushing of a hand, a lingering gaze, created a sense of intimacy deeper than any before. They no longer needed grand gestures to feel connected. The everyday moments were sufficient, meaningful, and profoundly moving. Their love had endured peril, and now it thrived in the light of survival. The turning point came when a final clue surfaced, a hidden message from the mastermind, revealing not just motivations, but a path to true closure. Téjun and Seiel realized that to end this chapter definitively, they would need to confront not only external dangers but the emotional scars lingering within themselves. The suspense that had driven the story now intertwined with introspection, testing their courage, trust, and emotional resilience. Traveling to a secluded location indicated by the message, they found themselves in an abandoned mansion at the edge of the city. A place frozen in time, yet brimming with secrets. Shadows played along the walls, the air thick with anticipation. Every creak of the floorboards and whisper of wind heightened tension, yet they moved together with unwavering resolve. Their hands remained clasped, a physical reminder that neither fear nor darkness could separate them. Inside, they discovered evidence of the mastermind's intentions, meticulously crafted schemes, documents, and recordings that laid bare the entire web of manipulation. Each revelation hit with the force of emotional truth. Betrayals by trusted allies, hidden motives of those they had thought innocent, and the intricate planning that had threatened their lives. Seiel's eyes glistened with a mixture of sorrow and understanding as she absorbed the weight of these truths. Téjun held her close, whispering reassurances that anchored both of them amidst the storm of revelations. The climax was inevitably confrontation that tested their courage, intelligence, and love. The mastermind emerged, not with overt violence, but with psychological precision, attempting to manipulate their emotions, exploit fears, and turn past doubts against them. Téjun and Seiel faced the challenge with unwavering unity. Their shared experiences, trust, and emotional depth allowed them to see through the deception, countering every manipulation with clarity, strength, and empathy. It was a battle fought not just with strategy, but with the unspoken power of love and trust. In the final moments of confrontation, the mastermind's influence crumbled. The truth, fully unveiled, left no room for lingering threats. Téjun and Seiel had not only survived but triumphed. The suspense resolved with intelligence, courage, and emotional fortitude. Their victory was as much internal as external, healing wounds, affirming bonds, and establishing a future free from shadows. The tension that had defined their journey finally eased, replaced by a profound sense of accomplishment and peace. Romantic closure accompanied this resolution. Téjun and Seiel shared moments that were deeply personal and universally relatable. The gentle brush of a hand, the warmth of an embrace, whispered words of love that carried both relief and hope. Their laughter, unrestrained and sincere, echoed through the empty halls, a celebration of survival, trust, and the beauty of shared life. These intimate moments highlighted that even amidst suspense and danger, love had been the guiding light, steady and enduring. As they returned home, the city awakening around them, the narrative shifted to emotional reflection. Téjun and Seiel recounted their journey not as a recounting of events, but as a meditation on growth, resilience, and the transformative power of love. Every trial, every betrayal, every heart-wrenching moment had strengthened their connection. The audience felt the catharsis, witnessing characters who had not only faced danger but had emerged with hearts intact, deeply human and profoundly relatable. The final scenes painted a life resumed but transformed. Téjun and Seiel embraced their passions, their careers, and their family bonds with renewed vigor. They engaged in community work, creative endeavors, and quiet nights filled with conversation and laughter. Yet, subtle hints of lingering vigilance reminded viewers that life's uncertainties never vanish entirely. The story emphasized that courage, love, and trust are ongoing practices, not one-time victories. A nuanced, emotionally rich conclusion that honored the complexity of the narrative. In a quiet evening scene, Téjun and Seiel sat atop a hill overlooking the city, the skyline glowing with the last light of sunset. Téjun turned to Seiel, his voice low but firm. "We've faced shadows, uncertainty, and betrayal. But through it all, we've found each other. And that's our true victory." Seiel smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Together, always," she murmured. The words resonated with the audience not merely as a romantic sentiment, but as a profound affirmation of partnership, trust, and resilience. The closing narration reflected on themes of suspense, emotional growth, and enduring love. Life, the voiceover intoned, is a series of shadows and light. We cannot choose the darkness we face, but we can choose how we confront it, who we trust, and whom we love. Téjun and Seiel's journey is a testament to courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond forged through adversity. And though every ending carries the whisper of a new beginning, their story, our story, remains a celebration of survival, connection, and the profound power of the human heart. The screen faded gently to black, leaving viewers with a lingering sense of completion and emotional satisfaction. Every thread of suspense, romance, and personal growth was resolved. Yet the story's resonance endured, a reminder that while narratives end, the lessons, emotions, and connections they evoke persist. Téjun and Seiel, standing together in the quiet light of dawn, embodied hope, resilience, and the beauty of shared life. Their journey had concluded, but its echoes would inspire, move, and captivate long after the final scene.